Today, Andy and Paul of Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, OMD, will be joining me after 9 to talk about the 40th anniversary release, Souvenir, the singles collection, as a box set edition too. They were at the Apollo last night here in Manchester, so let's hope they're not too hungover, because you know what these rock people are like. The Week in Music, with Claire Crane as he styles you. After a glorious gig in Manchester last night, although how can they be up and moving after 2 hours of dancing? I have no idea. I was exhausted just from watching. Well, they're here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
They're very much here.
We're barely moving, but we're moving.
Well, I was just saying, presumably you were throwing televisions through the hotel room window till the small hours.
Yeah. Up late all night long with drugs and women. In Paul's case, it was his wife and statins, but...
Oh, brilliant. So you were in Manchester last night. Good show?
Yeah,
it was
the old Apollo.
show.
Haven't played there for years.
And what was great was they took the seats out downstairs.
Oh,
so,
did they? That's better.
So, you
get 3,500 in there.
Increases the capacity, so it was really rocking there last night.
And you were at Glasgow at Halloween. Is that right? What was that like?
Yeah, that was amazing as well.
It was good. I mean, Glasgow, you can't go wrong with a Glasgow audience. But on Halloween, it was... The funny thing was that the support band is my son's band, MiG-15.
Yeah.
And they all did fancy dress. And my son went on stage as me circa 1978 with the afro and the braces and the baggy white shirt.
Wow.
And threw a few McCluskey shakes, which he doesn't normally do because he doesn't want to be associated with his dad normally.
Wow. So let us say that we're always delighted to see you, but the reason you're here is that there is Souvenir, the singles collection, 79 to 2019. This is 2 CDs, 3 LPs, all 40 of your singles in chronological order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we did realise that in 40 years we'd done 39 singles. So we thought if we write one more, it'll be 40 singles in 40 years.
And we're going to hear it. We're going to hear it in a little while. But then there's also an enormous box set which has got DVDs and things like that in it, yeah?
And 22 unreleased pieces of music, which Humphreys found in the archives.
Yeah, I went... EMI have got this massive archive near Heathrow Airport.
Right.
It's one of these giant vaults with the big metal door like you see in the movies, with the big wheel you have to turn to get in there.
Yeah.
And in there, there's obviously all the... Beatles stuff and Bowie stuff, but everything we've ever done is actually in there, all our tapes.
Some that you've forgotten about, presumably.
Well, this was it, and I was going through, I spent 2 days in there, really, and going through all these tapes, and I just kept texting Andy and taking pictures of tape boxes going, do you know what this is?
Yeah, well, the funny thing was, he kept saying, what's this? I said, I don't know, so we need it.
Yeah. How remarkable, though, to have essentially almost like your life stored in a vault somewhere.
Yeah.
What was incredible is it reminded us of how we used to write, because there was just 2 of us. We used to write onto tape, like in linear, kind of like just put down 4 or 5 minutes and then try and see what we could put on top of it, if we could. And some of them are the most obtuse experiments.
Yeah.
But if we didn't get anything on it, maybe there'd be a track on there that was on the album. At the end of the album being mixed, they all go off to storage. Now, these things would never come back to our studio. So there was these sort of... I mean, there's about 8 or 9 finished songs. But there's some beautiful, quite abstract things that sort of we didn't quite make into a song, but it's nice to hear how our thought process was.
Yeah, no, it was fascinating. That was the best bit for me, putting that together.
I bet it was. We'll talk a lot more about the history of OMD and this singles collection. You've picked a few tunes for us that you simply like by other people. You've picked a real favourite of mine, Let the Music Play by Shannon.
Do you know what? Yeah, we heard this, when did it come out? Was it 83 or something?
Yeah, it would be.
And it was the drums, the New York drums, those explosive... And we were like, wow.
Yeah.
How did they do that?
It was a sound at the time, wasn't it? Yeah. There's a few records that this at the time coming out of the States.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's it's a pop soul record, but it's all explosive drums.
Almost like industrial,
and synths.
Let's hear it. Let the music play, Shannon. It's signed. You're absolutely right. It's a pop record, essentially, but with sort of those crunching, semi-industrial drums on there.
It was revolutionary at the time with the kind of drum programming.
Yeah. Have you always, throughout all your career, over the 40 singles that are included in Souvenir, technology has moved with you, or have you moved with technology? Has it always been? Have you and the technology kind of been interwoven through the years?
Well, we've tried to. Yeah, we've tried to kind of keep up with the technology. You know, there was quite a big revolution when the first synth we got was like a Japanese revolution of cheap electronic parts, and so they started making cheap synthesizers
from the Mother's Mail Order catalogue. That's how it became. You know, synthesizers became accessible to kids like us from the Mother's catalogue. You know?
Yeah, and then technology advanced through the 80s, and the
Fairlights
and computers started entering into the music making environment, and but we've always kind of kept up with that. I mean, even now, we use the ultra modern synths now, which are basically virtual synths on computers, and a lot of young bands are horrified because they think we should be using the original analog synths.
Yeah, they're purists. But,
kids are purists, aren't they?
Where's your Jupiter 8? It's on eBay. You can buy it for £4,000.
Exactly.
We've got Andy and Paula here from OMD. We'll talk a lot more with them about this fantastic new the Souvenir, the singles collection is out now, 2 CDs and 3 LPs, all 40 singles in chronological order. But then there's a whole other huge box set as well, and we'll talk more about that after the news. The fade, right?
We forgive you.
Thank you for playing messages, says R. It has been a soundtrack to my life. And you were saying this always gets the party started when you play live. Yeah,
this is always the third song in our set, and last night was the same. It was like as soon as the sequencer started on this, the balcony was up as well as downstairs, and that was it. Off we went.
Great. Andy and Paul from OMD are here talking about Souvenir, which is a collection of all the singles. They're celebrating their 40th anniversary with this collection of all 40 singles in chronological order. And you've had phases, haven't you? Very distinct phases of your career, haven't you? There's been the pop period, the experimental period, the more... What would you call it? The more reflective...
The not having hit singles period.
I wasn't going to say...
Failed period.
But it's interesting, because, really, you're saying a gig is a journey, Paul. I guess this is a journey, this collection, isn't it, really? And for you as well, it must be like flipping through an old photograph album or something, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It is, yeah. When we were putting this together, because it's in chronological order, and we had to check it, because we know all the songs intimately. But when you hear them as a collection, one after another, you just really hear where we started and where we've arrived.
People hang memories on songs, and we're the same. It's like a coat-hook for all the memories that's specifically associated with that moment or that period.
Exactly. I was just saying, I hear your early stuff. I hear the first 2 albums, Message, anything like that, and I'm instantly transported to a freezing cold student hovel in Nolan Street, Southport. So
totally.
No, Jeff says, OMD were the first band I ever saw, Liverpool Empire, 1980. You're playing there on Monday.
Yes.
Which is great. It's part of the shows that you're doing. But you played, so that would be on the organisation tour, but you played there the year before with Gary Newman.
Yeah.
Is that your big showbiz, on train to the showbiz world?
It was a wonderful opportunity, really. Gary, just before Gary had his hits, he was still working, I think, in the Beggar's Banquet record shop, and he bought electricity himself.
Wow.
So we had, very cannily, we had our telephone number on the back, just in case, and he got his manager to phone us, because he came to see us play with Joy Division at the Nashville Rooms in London.
Yeah.
And we thought, isn't he nice? He's taking us on the road with... Because it wasn't... After a while, we suddenly realised, he's got a gigantic stage production, and the only thing he could get in front of the curtain would be 2 guys in a tape recorder. So very conveniently, we fit perfect.
It must have been helpful in the early days, though. The fact that you were, as Fripp, I think, once said, a small, highly intelligent, portable unit or something. Just the 2 of you in a tape machine.
Yeah, it worked.
But it did work, yeah.
There was only 2 of us in a tape machine because nobody wanted to play with us in the early days. But times changed.
Let's talk about the early days, because you were just telling me an amazing thing. You've brought along a couple of your favourite records as well. We're going to play a brilliant record by the Tit Up Explodes Camera, which I was thinking, how very generous, because I kind of wrongly, I don't know if I assumed that, there was fierce animosity and competition in those early Liverpool days, were there?
There was some rivalry. Yeah. Because, basically, Eric's club in Liverpool, you were playing to all the rest of the bands in Liverpool.
Yeah.
And so, they'd kind of politely applause and go, but... They're not
you can see them leaning over to each other going, they're all right, but they're crap compared to us, aren't they? But it was, October 78, OMD... the Teardrop Explodes and the Bunnymen all played their first gigs on the Thursday night free to members, you know, open mic night at Eric. So, I mean, it was a remarkable month, that was.
God, that is amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
And I used to... particularly, I loved the Bunnymen in the early days because they had a drum machine, not the drummer.
Yes.
And the Teardrops actually had this wonderful interweaving of bass and guitar and organ. So it was quite kind of complex and dysfunctional at the same time, and particularly Camera has got this on. And I clearly remember being so entranced by this particular song, and it's about cars, the different coloured cars, and taking photographs of them, that I decided to write something about cars. So the opening line in Almost, I travel oh so far, travel there by car, was inspired by Camera by the Teardrops.
Well, this is another one of those tunes they'll take me back to, shivering in with a 50p for the meter in Norton Street. The Teardrop Explodes and Camera. Oh, they were heady days. You were doing, I was just saying, you were doing your thing, they were doing their thing, the Bunnymen were doing their thing. I guess other bands there were not just you knocking around at the time, but it was a very fertile period, not just in Liverpool, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think the exciting thing at that time was that although we weren't influenced by punk kind of detonated the status quo for a couple of years, and it also, every provincial city had a club that would let people go and play. And I don't think it's any coincidence that actually, for a short period, in the late sort of 70s, almost all the bands who you heard of in the early 80s came from provincial cities, not from London, because it disintegrated for a couple of years, and A&R men had to go out of London to find bands.
No, you're so right. I think that happened quite quickly. I think London set off that grenade, as it were, but then very quickly Liverpool, Manchester, Sheffield started to do the interesting stuff. Yeah. Really, I know that's quite partisan of me, but I do think that.
Sorry, people in London, but it's true.
Well, I think it is true. I think, you know, well, no offence, but while, you know, Eater and the Lurkers were still doing their stuff in London, you were doing your stuff in Liverpool, and, you know, Clock DVA and all those people in Sheffield.
I think the thing is that we just had aspirations to kind of do some arty, weird music.
Stuff,
and we had no intention of actually making a career out of this. As I think that was why so many interesting bands from the provinces came out, because they just wanted to do their own thing. They didn't really think they were ever going to get anywhere.
Did you
so
not?
It was just like,
did you think this will be fun for a few years?
I mean, I think
we thought we were going to fun for one gig.
But you know, London wasn't looking. You know, they weren't. They were just very London-centric. All the labels, even the press, was all very London-centric. And so we were all kind of out on a limb, going, you know, doing our own things, but never expecting.
You had a few people, I guess, like Paul Morley, who's written for the box set.
Yes, he wrote the forward for the book,
and
for the album.
I mean, we also, the book that we've done has hundreds and hundreds of other people's stories, because that's the other thing as well, is our story is really the impact we've had on other people.
Yes.
And the foreword is written by a certain Professor Brian Cox.
Oh, wow.
Who tells a story of him and his mate went for a drive to the Chippy in Oldham and ended up at Stanlow Oil Refinery because they wanted to check it out.
I've told you this story before about Stanlow. I'm sure that my mate's dad worked at Stanlow, and we used to sometimes take his car and drive past Stanlow to look at the lights playing your song. And once he came into my mate's room when we were playing Stanlow, he said, "What's this?" We said, "Stanlow, it's about where you work." And he said, I won't say exactly what he said. He said, "It doesn't sound much like flipping Stanlow to me."
Yeah, well, we had a rather good line in romanticising ugly machinery.
But at night, it was incredible. It was like,
it was
like
it was
Blade
beautiful.
Runner, wasn't it?
Oh, it was amazing. Speaking of professors, Professor Tracy Hill's going to say, well, she's enjoying this. Goosebumps every time at Messages. Great to hear OMD. We're looking forward to seeing them in Portsmouth, says Nellie in Gosport. Saw OMD last Sunday in York. They were absolutely brilliant. So much energy. Lippy Kid is coming to see you in Sheffield tomorrow night. I tell you what, we'll mention something more about the book in a moment. Let's hear the newest track on the album, Don't Go. Anything we need to know about this?
Well, we wrote it as a B-side, didn't we?
Yeah, right. And then we decided it was too good to be a B-side. We hung on to it. We knew it was right, but there was something missing. And then finally, after about 6 goes in the studio, I walk in and he goes, well, I've got this idea for a melody, but I'm not sure. And I went, that's it, that's the Humphreys melody.
That's the Humphreys melody. This is Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, Don't Go. Song on the 40 singles in chronological order on Souvenir, the singles collection. That is Orchestral Manoeuvres and Don't Go. 2 CDs, 3 LPs, all 40 singles in chronological order. Let's just mention the book as well. This is Pretending to See the Future, which is basically an oral history of the band told by fans and colleagues and associates as well.
And then we weave it together to kind of join up all the dots. But it's just, you know, the thing is, you're not in the shop when people buy the record. You're not in the bedroom when they're listening to it, or in the car when they're driving to the gig going, I can't wait to hope they play this. So it's a great opportunity to really hear the impact that you have on people. And there's some incredible stories. I mean, I don't know how many of our songs have been played at funerals, which is quite incredible. But yeah, there's some very beautiful personal stories there, including, you know, people like Brian Cox and Vince Clarke, who started Depeche Mode because he heard Almost, and you know, some remarkable stories. And an exhibition that you played for us at the Cunard building at the Great British Music Experience. Tell us about this exhibition.
Yeah, we've. It's just we launched it a few weeks ago, didn't we? At the BME and the Cunard
British Music Experience in the Cunard, the one and only place I did a 9-to-5 job, as I remember saying on air. When I worked for the Customs Office. And basically they've got
Winston in the box.
Winston the tape recorder.
Your first tape recorder.
The Case catalogue keyboard. My original grey and purple grey and orange bass. Some old clothes and things we've kept. I mean, basically our life behind glass, just to make us feel really old, you know. But it's a remarkable collection of things that people have never seen before, like the sweater I was wearing in the Maid of Orleans video. I still had that.
Isn't it amazing, though, to think, not only when you were working there, but when you know, even perhaps when you supported Gary Newman, and at the time that must have been an extraordinary thing.
It was an amazing
to think that 40 years on in the city, you'd be in a nice way, museum exhibits under glass.
I mean, we'd never have dreamt that could ever possibly happen.
No.
I mean, we still believe we were sort of no-hopers and would get dropped by Virgin, you know, on our third album, almost.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. We're winning awards. The telephone box has got a blue plaque now.
Has it? In red frame, white lines?
Yeah.
Right.
So, do you know what? We tried to resurrect that song and play it live. It's like we dug down deep, excavated this mummy, and it will not come back to life. It's the ungrooviest song we ever wrote.
It's got that very odd bit.
You can't dance to
quirky.
it.
There's that quirky kind of quasi-military section in it, isn't there? Yeah.
So odd.
I always loved it, but it's got that odd bit. Dun, dun, dun,
your brain was obviously being damaged by your frozen flat, wasn't it?
Hey, I always like the funny stuff, the weird stuff. And speaking of which, the weird stuff, on the box set, you get some whole concert performances, newly rediscovered. A whole concert from Hammersmith Odeon in support of Dazzle Ships.
Yeah.
Probably your strangest moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's a lovely concert to hear that. And
great.
It was a lovely find down at the archive. But there's also all of our Top of the Pops appearances on there, which were, you know, which was amazing to see them all together.
The old grey whistle test that we did with ZZ Top and influenced them. No, they did. They credit their Going Electronic and the Eliminator album because of us, and the dance moves they used to do were because they robbed from me, from Old Grey Whistle Test 1980.
So now you know.
No, they're big fans. They used to play OMD songs before they went on stage.
That's amazing. That's
who'd have thought?
Who'd have thought, yeah. How random is that?
If you're lucky enough to have tickets, the tour continues, or you can get tickets, because you're at the Sheffield City Hall tomorrow. And then it continues to Liverpool, then Brum, then Leicester, then Bath, Oxford, Guildford, Portsmouth, Watford, Cambridge, Ipswich, Bexhill, Bournemouth, and then you're finishing off, I think, just Wednesday the 20th in London.
The old Hammersmith.
Yeah.
Lovely stuff. Here's another one of your favourite records that you brought along, Sound and Vision, David Bowie. It's just a great record. It still always sounds to me, like music of the future that's not arrived yet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I agree with that.
Not because it's weirdly electronic or anything. It just seems to be pop music either from another planet or another age.
They were consciously trying to do that. I mean, we're going to... But drums, they processed the drums. And, of course, he went to Germany because he was into Kraftwerk.
Yeah.
He got Eno in to give it a twist. And it's just remarkable.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's just pure genius.
Lovely to see you again, guys.
Thank you for having us.
We'll see you on the next 40th.
Absolutely. Well, sounds amazing, and there's an undercurrent of sadness to it, I also think, which is brilliant. Sound and Vision by David Bowie, chosen by Andy and Paul from OMD. It has gone down such a storm having the guys on the show today, Tracy and Bromsgrove, saying how great to hear them. Fantastic OMD Fest on Six Music. It's always a pleasure, and Souvenir is just such a great record. All 40 of those singles in chronological order. We didn't have time for Chris on the radio today.